Missed the Mark by Ann Butler. They were my private practical jokes. It started about 8 years ago. I was in the coffee shop killing time during my lunch break. It was winter and freezing bloody cold, but I needed to get away from the idiots that I worked with. I'd been thinking, God, if I have to listen to more chat about what's her name from the Real Housewives of whatever, or Pigs on Ice, or whatever the hell that dance cum skating competition is called, I'll scream. So I took a break from my desk, headed down to the coffee shop down the road and found a corner. I brushed the crumbs off the table that the useless staff hadn't got off their asses to clean, and sat down with a mug of their mediocre coffee. Almost immediately, I tuned into the conversation the woman on the table next door was having on her phone. She was telling someone that her blind date was running late, and my first thought was, a blind date in a coffee shop? Really? Anyway, this guy was running late and she had to get back to work. She said his name, Neil. She was saying some other stuff, but then she dropped her phone. I hid my mean smirk when she shrieked when she realised that the screen was smashed. She was muttering under her breath and I heard her say, "You're such a loser, Kylie." Then she gathered her things, shrugged into her coat and hurried out. I looked around me, but no one had paid any attention. People that were there, sitting around, were either tap-tapping on their laptops or wearing earbuds. Just then, a young man came in through the door. Looked like he was in his late 20s. His cheeks were flushed and his eyes were looking left to right, trying to find his target. On impulse, I got up and approached him. "Neil?" "Hello." He looked confused as hell. I made a story up on the spot. I told him that Kylie had to leave, but she was going to call him in a couple of hours to rearrange. I watched him leave the coffee shop, and then I went back to my lukewarm drink. But I didn't need it anymore. I was on a buzz as I imagined Neil waiting for Kylie's call. What a scream! I could see it all play out. Eventually, she'd get a replacement phone, and then she'd text him with the "my phone broke" excuse. He'd be sceptical. Then they'd be at cross purposes and mystified about the friend who'd passed Kylie's message on. Priceless. I wish I could be there to see it. Fast forward a few years. You'd be surprised at the number of times I was able to interfere in someone's plans without being found out. And you know what? They deserved it. All those people with their loud conversations in public. It astounds me that so many people don't seem to realise, or don't care, how much of their lives those forced to listen could decipher if we were bothered to try and pull the pieces together, filling in the blanks with whatever comes to mind. After the Kylie Neil incident, I realised that I'm just the type of person who revels in that type of mischief. Yeah. Yeah. One evening, I was waiting for my best friend, Max, in her local. She and I met there from time to time. It's a lovely gastropub type establishment and it's easy. I was early, and as I'd got used to doing, I started listening out for interesting bits of conversation. the woman was speaking quietly and giving instructions. Something about a spare key. Her phone made a muted ping sound, and she glanced around surreptitiously before she paused the call to read the text that had just come in. Her voice lowered even more when she started to speak again, and I worked out that she was repeating an address. I couldn't hear clearly, but it seems like she mentioned my friend Mags's street. Could that be right? I had my answer when Mags turned up. Mags knew the key woman. They acknowledged each other with a smile, which means that the bits of conversation I overheard made no sense. Interesting. Who's that? I asked Mags. She told me it was a neighbour. Then she mouthed the words, dodgy. I promised myself I'd get all the dirty details from her later on. We had a couple of drinks and some chicken wings and chips, and then prepared to walk out. Another coincidence struck then, because Key Woman was walking out the door as we gathered our things to leave. Thinking on my feet once more, I contrived a reason to follow Mags home. When Key Woman continued on past Mags's front door, I told Mags, let's leave me checking out your new reno project for another time. I'm actually feeling a bit tired. She asked me if I was all right and mentioned that I'd seemed a bit distracted. I told her that I was just feeling tired. Shall I come round on Friday night? I asked her. I'll bring cake. Predictably, Mags wanted to know what type of cake. Mags had a wicked sweet tooth. Talking to her about cake was like dragging a length of cable in front of a cat. I told her I'd see what my local bakery had to offer and surprise her. For a while I thought she was going to keep going on about the cake and that I'd miss where Key Woman lived, but she finally said goodnight and headed towards her front door. I turned towards the pavement once more and noticed that Key Woman had crossed the road and was now searching through her handbag. I started taking longer strides to close the gap, and I was almost abreast of her when she turned up the path of a well-kept terraced house. From the corner of my eye, I saw her stoop down and place what looked like an envelope under her doormat. When she started to rise, I sped up and turned my face away. My mischievous self already knew what I was going to do. I waited for 10 minutes before walking back down the street. I checked for a doorbell camera before I snuck in and swiped the envelope from under the mat. 2 streets away, I checked what was in the envelope. It was a fob for a car door and what looked like a license number. How interesting. I really should find a normal form of entertainment, I told myself, as I made the long walk back to my place, during which time I dropped the envelope and its contents into a bin. Maybe I'll make that a New Year's resolution. The police came to my door 3 days later. My brain scrambled as one of the officers told me I was being arrested. At the station, in the interview room, I found out that I'd been caught on a camera outside Key Woman's house. The police showed me the image. There was no mistake. I'd looked right at the camera without realising. Fuck. They were charging me with theft, and they wanted to know how I'd managed to break into the house. What? I didn't break into her house? Are you kidding me? They insisted that I must have. How else did I get the key, which the victim claimed had been stolen from inside her house? Well, I had to come clean then. told them what I did and that it had just been for a laugh. They were having none of it. Well, would you? Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? Eavesdropping on a complete stranger's conversation and then following them to cause mischief. I asked Mags to vouch for me for that night, and she tried. I know she did. But there's no getting away from that image of me on Key Woman's security camera. That frozen image will stay with me for a long time. I was up in court a few months later, charged with burglary and theft. I decided to plead guilty. Would have been stupid not to. In the month leading up to the trial, I had plenty of time to work out why that particular piece of mischief making had ended so badly. So this is what I know. I'm only one snide and cruel person in a world of snide and cruel people. Now this is what I think. I think what happened was that Key Woman wanted to have her car stolen. She'd arranged it, had left the fob in an envelope, and stuck it under her doormat for whomever was meant to come along, perhaps in the early hours of the morning, or when she was at work the next day, and steal the car. She'd claim she'd been broken into, make a call to her insurance provider, and job done. But then I'd stepped in and put my clever self in her way. Too clever for my own good. I'd picked out a mark, but the mark found me. You've just listened to Miss the Mark. The story was written by Ann Butler. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed listening, and subscribe to the Book Griffin channel for notification of new episodes. Please note that no portion of this story may be adapted or broadcast without written permission from a member of the Book Griffin team.